The clang of steel on wood rang out like a starting pistol. I'd just driven a rusted staple into the weathered post when I heard the tires crunch across the gravel, slow and deliberate. I didn't turn. Not yet. Just kept my hand on the hammer and stared at the crack in the pine, where rot had started to chew through. It felt like an old wound reopening. "Sir, step away from the fence." Now I turned. 2 patrol cars. Lights swirling but sirens off, as if they didn't want to wake the neighborhood. Just shame me in it. A third vehicle, white, clean, smug, idled behind them. And leaning out the window, her eyes hidden by oversized sunglasses, and a smirk stitched so tight across her face it looked permanent, was Karen Devlin, president of the Homeowner Association. The self-appointed queen of our little patch of pine scrub and brittle soil. "I told you he was hostile," she called out. "He threatened me yesterday. Ask him." I opened my mouth, closed it again. The younger officer, too clean, too nervous, put a hand on his holster. The older one, heavier, kept his arms crossed, watching, judging. I recognized that look. I'd seen it overseas, in checkpoints and embassies. Same tone. "You're guilty until we're tired of pretending you're not." "Sir, put down the hammer," the young one said. I did. The metal hit the dirt with a hollow clink. A sound like giving up. One of my neighbors had already come out onto their porch. Then another. A slow ripple of curiosity crawling down the street. No one stepped closer. No one said a word. Just watched, observed, like the HOA wanted them to. "Oh, what's the issue?" I asked, low and steady. You're modifying perimeter structures without HOA approval." Karen chimed in sweetly, stepping fully out of her SUV now. Her nails were painted HOA blue. Her clipboard was already out. "That fence is shared property. Section 8, paragraph 4. You know the rules, Raymond." I hated that she used my full name. My wife used to do that, but with warmth. Karen used it like a knife. I'm replacing broken staples," I said, "keeping coyotes out." Intent doesn't matter," she said. "Procedure does." That's when the young officer took my ID and radioed it in. The older one finally moved. To Karen, "Ma'am, if there's no direct threat, and this is a civil matter—" "I have documentation," she interrupted. "He's had 3 violations in the last quarter. One more, and it escalates. They didn't arrest me. That would have been too much, too clean. Instead, they filed a report, took photos, made notes. The hammer stayed in the dirt." Karen smiled like a mother who'd just scolded a child in front of the whole classroom. By the time they drove off, I was standing alone in front of a half-repaired fence and a neighborhood that had judged me without saying a word. I bent down, picked up the hammer. My hand shook a little. Not from fear, from something colder. I sat on my porch long after the sun dipped down. The cicadas screamed like broken speakers, and somewhere in the distance, a sprinkler ticked like a bomb. I kept staring at that fence, at the way it leaned, tired and worn, like an old man who'd seen too much. I knew how it felt. Inside, the house was quiet. Still smelled faintly of lavender, my wife's favorite oil. She'd kept this place alive through sheer will. After the cancer took her, I let things go slack. The fence was the first thing I touched since she passed. First thing I tried to fix. And they tried to make me feel like a criminal for it. I opened her old drawer, found the tin box she used for receipts and notes. Inside, under a bundle of faded coupons, was her HOA file, neatly labeled. Everything always neat with her. There were meeting notes, dues, letters, and at the bottom, a hand-scribbled list of names, with dates, check marks. The last few had stars beside them. One name stood out, Barrows. I hadn't thought of him in years. He'd been on the HOA board briefly, then disappeared. No farewell party, no notice in the bulletin, just gone. She'd circled his name twice. I sat back in my chair, the tin box open in my lap. Karen thought today was a win. She thought I'd been cowed. She had no idea what she'd just kicked awake. Barrows had lived 2 streets down, in the house with the crumbling chimney and the overgrown jasmine that used to choke the fence like a jealous lover. He was quiet, tall, always wore those weird desert boots with the thick soles. A Vietnam vet, some said. Others thought he was just odd. But my wife liked him. Said he had kind eyes. Said he saw through people in a way most didn't. I remembered the last time I saw him. He'd been hauling a crate of books into the back of a battered pickup. His eyes met mine briefly. There was something like apology in them, like a man who knew he was leaving someone behind in a war. The next day, his place was empty. The jasmine dried out. HOA cut it down within a week. Now, standing in my kitchen, with his name circled in my wife's handwriting, I felt the tug of something old and sharp. My fingers found the rotary number on the back of the envelope. Scribbled years ago, just 3 digits and a dash. But it was a start. I found a listing online. Took me 2 hours, a cup of bad coffee, and a call to a friend from the VFW. Barrows was still alive, still in state, out near the hills, in a town that didn't have sidewalks or mailboxes, just dirt and memory. I drove out the next morning. The sun came down hard on that road. No shade, no forgiveness. His trailer sat behind a rusted gate, a hand-painted sign reading, "No Hoe, no salesman, no Jesus." I parked anyway, walked up slow. My boots kicked dust that settled on my jeans like chalk. He opened the door before I knocked. Well, hell. Raymond Walker, he said. His voice was sandpaper over gravel. Didn't think I'd ever see you again, or want to. I stood there. Let him look. Let him measure me. I'm not here for comfort, I said. I'm here about Karen and what they did to you. He didn't blink, just opened the screen and walked back inside. I followed. The place smelled like rust and cedar chips. Piles of books, maps, old radios. One wall had photos, all black and white, of streets, houses, mailboxes. I recognized some from our neighborhood. Others, I didn't. "You got 5 minutes," he said, dropping into a chair with the sigh of a man who's seen too much truth. I told him everything. The fence, the cops, the look in Karen's eyes when she realized she could humiliate me without consequence. He nodded. Once. Then tossed a manila folder onto the table. "I kept this," he said. "Not 'cause I thought I'd ever use it, but 'cause I knew one day someone would crawl back through the fire." Inside were documents. Voting logs, financial transfers, emails, copies of ballots with the same handwriting, signed under 10 different names. It was a web, thin and sticky, of fraud and shadows. Oh, why didn't you do anything? I asked. He leaned back. The chair creaked like old bones. Because people don't want truth, Raymond. They want peace, even if it's fake. I tried. They shut me down. Said I was paranoid. Said I forged it all. Karen? She smiled while they did it, like she'd already buried me. I sat there in silence, my hands flat on the table. What do I do with this? Barrows looked me dead in the eye. Okay, you hurt her. Not with fists. Not with cops. With the thing she fears more than anything. Loss of control. You make her drown in her own rules. I left with the folder. Drove home with the windows down and the wind clawing at my face. I didn't feel righteous. I felt tired. Dirty. Like a man carrying dynamite through a crowded church. That night, I opened my wife's old laptop. The fan whined like a mosquito. I scanned every page, marked what I could. Names, dates, inconsistencies. By 2 a.m., I'd made 3 copies, one digital, one on a USB, one printed and sealed in a Ziploc that I hid inside the shed's insulation. In the morning, I walked the perimeter of my property. The fence was still broken where they'd made me stop. I drove one more staple into place. Just one. Then I waited. Karen always noticed when someone disobeyed her script. The letter arrived 2 days later. Hand-delivered. Thick cardstock, embossed HOA seal, like a wedding invitation from hell. I didn't even have to open it. I knew what it said. Violation. Failure to comply. Final notice. The envelope was scented. Lavender. Karen's brand of psychological warfare. She'd weaponized my wife's favorite smell. And that, more than the threat inside, made my stomach turn. I didn't bring it inside. Just laid it on the porch rail and watched the wind lift its corners, teasing it like a dead thing that didn't know it was dead yet. I called Joan. She was one of those people you forget until the moment you remember how much they mattered. Retired graphic designer, lived down near the cul-de-sac. Used to run the HOA mailers back when they were printed on recycled stock and not full of legalese and threats. My wife used to help her with her garden. Said Joan had a good heart buried under too many cats and too many years of silence. She answered on the 3rd ring. I asked her if she had a moment. She said, I have 15 years of moments. Come over. Her house smelled like cinnamon and lint. Warm. Tired. Like it remembered better days. I laid the documents out on her coffee table, careful not to crease them. She read in silence. Her hands didn't shake, but her eyes narrowed with each page. By the end, she looked like someone who'd just remembered what betrayal felt like. She took my designs, Joan muttered, watered them down, said they were too emotional. Then she cut my name from the credits. I let her. God help me, I let her. You still have access to any of the print platforms? She stared at me. Then she stood. Walked to the back room. When she returned, she carried a laptop older than my truck. Let's cause a little confusion, she said. What we made wasn't flashy. No headlines. No manifestos. Just a quiet whisper in the form of a flyer that looked exactly like the HOA's standard format. But the contents were poison. Aiti kurai. Important update on voting eligibility, it said, and below that, Due to ongoing concerns regarding registration accuracy, the board has instituted a trial of remote mail-in verifications. If you receive a confirmation form, please return it within 48 hours. Failure to do so may result in a temporary suspension of your voting rights. We printed a dozen, then 2 dozen, then 50. I walked the neighborhood just before dusk, in the lull between dog walks and dinner. Slipped them into mailboxes with the smoothness of a man who used to move in shadows. The next day I waited. By noon, the neighborhood chat lit up like a bonfire soaked in gasoline. Did you get this form? Is this real? What's going on with the board? Karen's official channel stayed silent. By 4, someone posted a photo of a flyer. I watched the thread spiral. Accusations, questions, panic. Joan messaged me just 3 words. It's working. Slowly. But Karen wasn't quiet for long. She called Ani an emergency HOA meeting. Not public. Just board members and key contributors. The same clique that drank cheap wine on Tuesdays and pretended it was governance. I didn't wait for the minutes. Instead, I found Ike. Ike lived 3 doors down. Kept to himself. Spent most of his time in the garage surrounded by wires and parts that buzzed and blinked. My wife once said he looked like a man who could build a satellite from scrap metal and anger. I knocked. He opened the door in silence. Saw the folder in my hands. I know what this is, he said. Come in. His house smelled like solder and burnt toast. He had a dozen screens, half of them filled with HOA notices, public records, bylaws. He pointed to one, i.e., you want to end her, he said flatly. You start by showing that the entire voting database is trash. Karen runs it. If it's compromised, everything they've passed is illegal. Can you prove it? He didn't answer, just turned the screen. Rows and rows of entries. Same surnames, same IP addresses, same login times. Dozens of phantom voters, the kind that only existed when Karen needed a majority. Can you spoof one? I asked. He raised an eyebrow. Why? Because we're going to let her incriminate herself. That night, Ike created a fake homeowner. Gave him a name, a property, even a signature. We submitted a test form through the official HOA portal. It was accepted, verified. Karen never checked. I sat on my porch again. Same place, same cicadas. The wind had picked up. Somewhere, a dog barked. I thought about my wife, about how much she believed in doing things the right way. I wasn't sure this counted, but I also knew some weeds only die when you pull the roots, not just the leaves. The next morning, I received another letter. This one was hand-signed. Karen was escalating. This time, the letter came with a knock. Karen stood on my porch. No smile, no clipboard. Just that damn lavender perfume. And a look like she'd swallowed a lemon whole and pretended it was a communion wafer. She held the letter between 2 fingers like it was beneath her to touch anything on my property. I didn't reach for it. Just leaned on the door frame and let her talk. You're in violation. Again. Which clause? Her nostrils flared. Perimeter alterations without formal submittal. You didn't wait for approval. I replaced a staple. You've been warned? I said nothing. Let the silence stretch until it made her shift her weight. This isn't a war, Raymond. It's about order. No, I said. It's about control. And you're losing it. She pressed the envelope into my chest, sharp and deliberate. Her eyes flicked past me, toward the living room window. For a second, something changed in her posture. Not fear, not exactly, but wariness. Like maybe she realized I wasn't going to fold this time. I suggest you reconsider your tone before this escalates. I watched her walk back to her car. Her heels clicked like gunshots on the porch steps. I shut the door, locked it, then locked the back door, then the shed. Old habits. The letter was thin this time. Just 2 lines. I go on say, your account is under disciplinary review, pending suspension of HOA privileges, which meant I was being isolated, cut off from the few rights they allowed: voting, appeals, access to minutes. They were going to make me disappear on paper before they tried to do it in person. I called Joan, then Ike. We met in my garage. No lights, just the dusty beam of a clamp lamp over the workbench. It felt like a war council. She's circling the wagons, Joan said. There's a rumor they're rewriting the bylaws. Can she do that without a quorum? I asked. Ike shrugged. Not legally, but Karen's never been too fond of legally. I rolled out the folder from Barrows, laid it on the bench. Hardcore. We don't hit her head on. We let her dig deeper. Then we make the ground fall out from under her. Joan smiled. You're not the man I remember. I buried that man with my wife, I said. This one's just what's left. We devised the next step. Ike would create 2 more phantom homeowners with full digital trails. Joan would draft a community engagement initiative flyer that encouraged residents to RSVP for a fake listening session, but with subtle inconsistencies. Made up names on the board, impossible dates, contradictions in the bylaws cited. The goal wasn't to deceive. It was to confuse, erode, make people start to question the reality Karen had built. By the weekend, the flyers were out. Joan used the same print stock, the same fonts, the same passive-aggressive tone Karen favored. It was uncanny. Even I couldn't tell if they were real or not. The chat exploded. Wait, who's Carol Templeton? There's a listening session this Thursday? I thought it was next month. Why is the RSVP link redirecting to the community dog park page? Karen posted a blanket denial. Claimed someone was spreading misinformation. But the damage was done. Doubt, once seeded, doesn't need watering. It grows in silence. The next day, Karen came back. This time, she didn't knock. She stood by the sidewalk, arms crossed, watching me reset the post hole for a fence section that had leaned too far. You think you're clever? She said. I kept working. You think this won't come back to bite you? I drove the post deeper. She stepped closer. You're not a martyr, Raymond. You're just lonely. That one landed. She saw it, smiled. I'll see you at the disciplinary hearing. I looked up. Talking good. Because I'll be bringing friends. She frowned, turned, left. Back in the house, I sat on the edge of the bed. Her words echoed. Not the threat. The other part. You're just lonely. I was. God help me, I was. I reached for my wife's old scarf. Still smelled faintly of rosemary. I held it, eyes closed. Not crying, just holding. That night I didn't sleep. I dreamed of fences, of rooms with no doors, of Karen's face, stretched and blurry, smiling while my house crumbled around me. In the morning, the first anonymous message came through the mailbox. Stay down or we pull everything. I burned it. Then drove another staple into the fence. I didn't know who sent the message, but it smelled like printer ink and cowardice. The paper was cheap, the handwriting blocky, and rushed. Black marker. No return address. Just a message. Stay down or we pull everything. It wasn't a warning. It was a test. I burned it in a coffee can behind the shed. Watched the edges curl and hiss like snakes in the flame. My hands didn't shake this time. That worried me. Not the threat. The calm. Like I'd already accepted the rules of a game I hadn't agreed to play. By noon, Joan had forwarded me a screenshot. Karen was calling for a closed-door executive session. No time, no place. Just the word confidential. That was her move when things slipped through her fingers. She'd tighten her grip, pull the strings closer, bury whatever she didn't like under the rug of procedure. I drove to Ike's. He opened the door in socks, holding a soldering iron like a cigarette. You look like a man who found a bear trap under his welcome mat. She's planning something. He motioned me in. Screens everywhere again. Some now looping footage from the HOA's last recorded meetings. Joan had dug up the archives. Ike was training a face recognition script on the videos. Said he wanted to see how often certain names appeared in votes that technically required new members. If we can prove the board didn't have quorum, he said, none of the past 6 months' policies hold water. I don't need to unravel her past, I said. I need to make sure her present unravels itself. That's when he paused. Turned to another screen. Then you're gonna like this. On his monitor was a login timestamp from the HOA's internal portal. A ghost voter we'd created 2 nights ago. Someone named Valerie Harding. She had attended the last 2 board meetings digitally. Ike had routed her IP through a network in a neighboring state. It had been verified and accepted. Want to know the best part? He said. Karen referenced Valerie by name in her last internal memo. She thinks she's real. My stomach twisted. What if we force Valerie to vote against Karen? Ike grinned like a man who just cracked a vault. We waited a day. Then, during the next digital poll, a routine vote on landscape budget amendments, Valerie submitted a dissenting vote. Within hours, the HOA chat was chaos. Someone had noticed. Who is Valerie? When was she added? Karen's reply was clinical. Valerie Harding has been a remote stakeholder since Q1. Her credentials are verified. We watched. People began digging, asking questions. The cracks deepened. Not wide enough yet to swallow her, but enough to stumble. That night, I sat in the dark with the file from Barrows, open across the floor like a crime scene. It smelled like dust and ink and quiet fury. My wife had marked these names. She must have known. She must have been working on this before she got sick, and I'd missed it. I thought I was keeping the world off her back. Maybe she was trying to save me all along. I found her journal. Not a diary. She hated that word. But the little red book with the ribbon marker. Tucked inside was a page I'd never read. Ray's stronger than he knows, but he won't fight unless someone makes it personal. Yeah. I pressed the paper to my chest. Felt the burn of that sentence settle into my ribs like a second spine. The next morning, I drove to the county archives. Not to chase ghosts, to register a new LLC, one with a neutral name. Something bland. Something Karen would never see coming. That afternoon, a new flyer hit the mailboxes. Neighborhood Improvement Fund. Community panel seeking advisors. By invitation only. We sent it to 6 residents. 3 responded. 1 was Carol Phelps, former HOA treasurer, retired CPA, and a woman whose German Shepherd once bit Karen's poodle during a 4th of July cookout. She was perfect. Carol met me at the library. We sat in the genealogy section, between dusty records and faded family trees. I laid out the documents, the inconsistencies, the false votes. She didn't blink. I always knew she cooked the books, but I never thought she'd be dumb enough to leave fingerprints. I don't need you to expose her, I said. I need you to join something new. Carol's eyes sparkled. How disruptive are we talking? Disruptive enough to make her think she's still in control? Until she isn't. She smiled like a woman handed a sword she forgot she owned. That night, Karen stood in front of my house again. No letter. No clipboard. Just her and that perfume. Thicker now. You're meddling, she said. I'm participating, I replied. She tilted her head. You don't get to create your own rules. I stepped closer. Neither do you. But it's cute how long you thought you did. She didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened around her phone. You're going to regret this. No, you are. Because for the first time in years, you're not the only one playing the game. She turned and walked away without another word. I watched her go, then walked to the fence, another staple. One more line held. Carol didn't waste time. By the end of the week, the Neighborhood Improvement Fund had an email list, a fake administrative shell, and a monthly newsletter template. Joan handled the visuals. Ike secured the back end, rerouting digital correspondence through proxies so well hidden, even the NSA would have had to squint. And me? I started knocking on doors, not to campaign, to listen. I wore my oldest flannel, the one with the tear near the elbow, and the sawdust still clinging to the cuffs. No clipboard, no mission statement. Just the truth. They're not looking out for us anymore. Maybe it's time we do. Most nodded. Some hesitated. One woman shut the door before I finished my second sentence. But the ones who stayed, the gardeners, the old couples, the war widows, the man who raised bees behind the garage, they looked me in the eye, and something in them moved. Not much, but enough. Karen's regime wasn't built on loyalty. It thrived on inertia, and inertia, once disturbed, never settles back the same. The next board meeting was announced suddenly. Saturday morning, closed format. Security reasons, they said. A neighbor told me she saw Karen arguing with someone outside the clubhouse the night before. Hands flailing, voice high-pitched, like a kettle seconds from screaming. We didn't try to get in. We just waited. An hour after the meeting ended, the official update hit the forum. The board has enacted emergency amendments to the community charter to preserve procedural integrity. Ike read between the lines. She's panicking. What's the change? I asked. Saikshu, Clause Addition. Board can suspend voting rights of any resident under active investigation for misconduct. I felt the knot form in my chest. They're preparing to erase me. Carol didn't blink. Then we give them someone else to erase first. That night, Carol sent an email from her newly minted fund address to Karen's official HOA inbox. Subject: Clarification request regarding board quorum eligibility. She cited several outdated member roles. Asked politely, but firmly, if the current board had been ratified under the legally required process. It was bait wrapped in cordiality. Karen didn't reply, but the next day, a new violation letter appeared in my mailbox. Photograph included. Black and white. Me, leaning over the fence, hammer in hand. No timestamp. No context. Just a caption. Unauthorized structural modification. Strike 4. I laughed. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. A real sharp thing. Because the photo, the one they thought would incriminate me, clearly showed the HOA sprinkler system in the background. Active. Running during a declared drought restriction. I scanned the photo, sent it to Ike. He saw it instantly. You're not just innocent, he said. You're a damn whistleblower. Joan drafted a bulletin. Residents are reminded of water usage guidelines. Any photographic evidence of violations should be submitted for review. We printed 100, distributed them overnight. The next morning, Karen exploded online. Accusations. Denials. A rambling message accusing malicious actors of manipulating imagery and spreading falsehoods. But she never denied the sprinkler. Carol posted one sentence in the thread. Accountability begins with leadership. It went viral. Well, and as viral as a local HOA thread gets. 87 likes, 22 comments, 15 DMs. Enough. Enough to make Karen snap. That night, someone kicked my shed door in. Didn't steal anything. Didn't break tools. Just tossed papers. Emptied drawers. Left a pile of shredded receipts in the middle of the floor. Message received. I sat on the back step with my bat across my lap, staring at the dark. I thought about my wife. She wouldn't have let it get this far. But then again, she always believed people could be better. I wasn't sure I did anymore. In the morning, Carol showed up with coffee and a copy of the HOA's latest financial summary. She pointed to a line item. Community events, petty cash reserve. It had doubled since last quarter. Karen's bleeding the fund, she said. She knows she's losing, so she's pillaging the vault. Joan joined us, then Ike. We sat around my kitchen table, elbows on the wood my wife once polished every Sunday. We didn't talk about what to do. We talked about how to make the final cut, how to collapse the whole rotten thing without becoming just another version of it. That night, I printed a single letter. No flyer, no signature, just one page. Folded it, sealed it, addressed it to Karen. Then I waited, not for her to open it, but for her to realize she had already lost. Karen didn't open the letter. I know because she didn't need to. The envelope alone was enough. Plain white, no return address, just her name, written in black ink. In the same careful handwriting I'd used to write my wife's name on birthday cards for 32 years. The silence that followed was the kind that feels like the air before a storm. Thick, charged, expectant. She disappeared from the chat for 2 days. No posts, no directives, no announcements. Then, a message. All board activities are temporarily suspended for review. Further updates to follow. No explanation, no justification. Just a corporate shrug. And just like that, the pulse of the Homeowner Association stuttered. Carol was the first to act. She forwarded the bylaws. Highlighted a clause few remembered. In the event of administrative suspension, interim fiduciary oversight defaults to the longest tenured board-certified treasurer. That was her. Within an hour, she sent a notice. Per protocol, financial oversight will temporarily fall to me. All disbursements paused. Petty cash frozen. Joan launched the final volley. A single-page update from the Improvement Fund. Residents seeking reimbursement for HOA fees during the suspension period may apply via our neutral review process. Neutral, not official, not binding, but enough of a seed. By evening, 15 requests came in. Some small, fence permits, gate key charges, late fee disputes. Others much larger. Years of simmering resentment now had a door to knock on. I stood on my porch, sipping cold coffee, watching the sun sink behind Karen's house. The lights were on, curtains shut. A shape moved behind the blinds. Fast, erratic, like someone pacing, like someone trapped in the castle she built. I hadn't told anyone what was in the letter, because there was nothing in it, just a blank sheet of paper. The threat was never in the words, it was in the silence. The next day, a man knocked on my door. Tall, built like a fire hydrant in flannel. Said his name was Dunn. Claimed to be a compliance auditor from the HOA's legal subcommittee. There was no such position. I knew that. He knew I knew. This can all go away, he said. Just walk it back. Delete the files. Dissolve your little club. I didn't answer. Just stared at the mole under his left eye and thought about the way termites hollow things from the inside. Karen's not done, he added. She's just regrouping. And when she's back, she won't be so polite. I'm not done either, I said. But I was never polite. He left a card. It had no number. I burned it. Same as the others. Ike called that night. Hey, you're behind. They're trying to pull access logs to figure out who's behind the fake accounts. If they find my trail, they won't, I said. I'm not worried about me. I paused. He meant me. We keep pressure steady, I said. No new moves, just maintain. Let her stew. But the stew boiled over faster than expected. The following evening, Karen showed up at Carol's. Unannounced, screaming, threatening legal action, demanding she withdraw her claim to interim oversight. Carol called the sheriff, not 911, not HOA security, but the sheriff, a real one. The report was filed. The patrol car lingered. Neighbors watched from porches and behind blinds, the same way they had when I was humiliated weeks before. But this time, it wasn't me standing in the spotlight. It was Karen, red-faced, pacing, pleading, her voice high and brittle. Something broke that night, not just in her, in the spell. The next day, Ike sent me a message. Just 2 words. We're in. He'd accessed the internal communications archive. All the drafts, memos, emails Karen had saved to the HOA portal. Most were banal, but one thread was flagged. Strategic voter management. Contained within, notes on creating ghost owners, templates for ballots, even a sample signature guide. It was a playbook, a confession, written slowly over months, hidden in plain sight. I didn't forward it, didn't leak it. I printed 1 copy and took a walk. Karen was on her porch, sitting stiff, like a woman waiting for a verdict she already knew was coming. I handed her the manila envelope. She didn't open it, just held it in her lap. It's over, I said. She didn't argue, didn't even blink, just whispered, I thought I was doing the right thing. Water. And for the first time, I believed her. But it didn't matter. Intent only buys you so much time. Consequence does the rest. Karen didn't leave her house for 3 days after I handed her the envelope. No lights, no cars, no clipped lawn edges or trash bins aligned to HOA specs. It was like the queen had vanished into her own castle walls, and outside, the kingdom shifted. Carol, now acting treasurer by silent consent, posted an open letter. It wasn't dramatic, just a list of numbers. Dues collected, funds disbursed, discrepancies noted. The tone wasn't accusatory, it was forensic. But anyone with a calculator and a conscience could see what it meant. Joan followed with a bulletin from the fund, a call for proposals, real ones, for fixing the sidewalk near the school, repainting the vandalized benches, restoring the community garden. The kinds of things the Homeowner Association used to pretend it cared about. By noon, 10 residents had signed up. By dusk, they were planting marigolds. The power vacuum didn't create chaos. It created oxygen. I watched it happen from my porch. Hammer still warm from repairing the last loose board on the fence. Funny thing about a broken fence, it lets in the wind again, lets you breathe, but it wasn't over. Not yet, because the Homeowner Association still existed, still had a bank account, a charter, a shell. And as long as the corpse twitched, someone, maybe Karen, maybe someone worse, could drag it upright again. That's when Ike pitched the idea. End it. Not reform it, not redirect it, collapse it. He laid out the plan in my garage over cold pizza and a war movie playing silent in the background. The HOA's tax-exempt status depends on verified community service activities, verified elections, and active quorum. Nice. All 3 are provable lies now, I said. He nodded. So we submit a complaint, not to the board, to the IRS. I froze. That's nuclear. No, Ike said. It's a mirror. We're not punishing them. We're showing them to themselves. Carol was hesitant. Joan, too. Not because they didn't want it, but because they feared what might rise in the vacuum. The HOA, for all its rot, was still familiar, predictable. I won't file it in my name, I said. I'll do it as Valerie. Joan raised an eyebrow. The ghost? Exactly. Let their phantom be their undoing. The next morning, we compiled everything. Forged voter rolls, financial inconsistencies, communication logs. Ike formatted it into a digestible, formal package, complete with annotated screenshots and hard evidence. We submitted it through the IRS whistleblower portal, encrypted, time-stamped, buried behind enough digital misdirection to make any trace meaningless. Then we waited. And while we waited, something strange happened. The neighborhood got quiet. Not the silence of fear, the silence of peace. Kids on bikes again. Lawns mowed to preference, not policy. Neighbors waving without checking if they were violating protocol. Someone even put up wind chimes. Something Karen had once fined a woman for claiming noise pollution. 3 days passed. Then a week. Then the letter arrived. Not to me. To Carol. From the IRS. Confirming receipt, confirming investigation. She called a meeting. Not official, not mandatory, not under any charter. Just coffee and chairs in her driveway. 23 people showed up. We talked. No one raised voices. No one tried to seize control. We just talked about the fence I'd fixed, about the garden, about what the HOA used to be, and what we'd allowed it to become. Someone asked me what was in the envelope I gave Karen. I told them, a blank page, I said, because she didn't need a threat. She just needed space to write her own ending. They were quiet after that. Then someone passed me a clipboard, blank sign-up sheet. Carol nodded. We don't need an HOA, but we could use a council, informal, rotating. Just folks who care. I looked at the paper, then at my hands, calloused, scarred, still steady. I signed, not because I wanted to lead, but because I finally understood something my wife must have known all along. It wasn't about fences. It was about keeping people in or out. And maybe it was time to stop building walls. It rained the morning the official letter came. Not a storm. Just that slow, steady drizzle that sinks into the soil and makes the pine needles shine like old pennies. I was on the porch, coffee in one hand, watching the fence line. The same one they tried to weaponize against me. The one I'd rebuilt by hand, one staple at a time. The envelope was thin. Government seal, black ink. No flourish. The Homeowner Association's tax-exempt status had been revoked. The charter dissolved. All legal authority ceased, pending investigation. And just like that, it was gone. No meetings, no votes, no fines, no Karen. I read it twice. Then once more. Not because I didn't believe it, but because some victories are so quiet, they feel like fiction. I didn't cheer, didn't dance. Just sat there, watching the rain drip from the edge of the gutter. My wife used to clean every spring. I remembered the way she whistled while she worked. Off key, always the same 3 notes. I hadn't heard them in years, but now I could feel them in my bones. Later that day, I walked the neighborhood. Not with purpose, just to see. Kids were playing with chalk on the sidewalk. An old man was teaching his grandson how to sand wood in the garage. Someone left a basket of lemons by their gate with a sign, "Take what you need." Nobody asked for permission. Nobody was afraid. I passed Karen's house. The curtains were open. She sat at the table, alone, lit by the soft glow of a desk lamp. No papers, no laptop, just a cup in her hand, and a look on her face like someone reading a story that didn't end the way they thought it would. I didn't wave. She didn't look up. That evening, the community council met again. Still no rules. Still no roles. Just people. Talking. We voted to paint the mailboxes. We disagreed about colors. We laughed. It was the first real vote this place had seen in years. Joan brought cookies. Ike actually smiled. Carol made a joke about how she'd rather go back to babysitting her German Shepherd than balancing budgets. When it was over, people lingered, just a little. I stayed behind to stack chairs. A woman I barely knew, Grace, I think, came up to me. My husband used to say this place felt like a boot on his chest, she said. Now it just feels like a street again. I nodded. Didn't know what to say. She touched my arm. Your wife would have been proud. I don't remember walking home, just the weight of those words trailing behind me like the smell of rain on hot pavement. I sat on the porch, stared at the fence. The wood was still crooked in places, still gray from weather. But it stood, strong enough, and I knew, deep down, that I hadn't won anything. Not really. What I did was make space. Just enough for people to breathe again. That was all she ever wanted. So I took off my boots. Let my feet feel the damp earth. Felt the air shift, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone.